Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Wow, that was quite a loud, boisterous morning. So thank you. It's wonderful to be here. It's also wonderful to see so many awesome women in the audience. That is something that I have to say. Appreciating the men too, but something that I don't often get to see out in Silicon Valley. So it's really thrilling to see that in the crowd today. Now, today I want to take you through 10 of the most exciting trends that I'm seeing in tech, in entrepreneurship, in business, that any of us can apply to our own lives, our businesses. Maybe some of you are starting your own company or are thinking of one day down the road starting your own company. But before I get into any of that, I want to just explain to you for a little bit why I'm even on the stage, because many of you are probably familiar with someone else with the last name Zuckerberg. And I don't want you to think you're getting like sloppy seconds here today or anything. So I'm just want to give you a little bit of my background. Now, I graduated from Harvard in 2003. The only reason I obnoxiously name drop going to Harvard is because I have another sibling who did not graduate from Harvard. So when you have one thing going for you, you have to, toot your horn a little. Now, one thing a lot of people don't know is that my dream was actually to sing on Broadway. That if you had asked me when I was 7 years old what I wanted to do with my life, I would have said, I want to be a singer, I'm going to sing on Broadway one day. Well, my dreams were cruelly shattered when I got to college, and I did not get into the music major there. My mentor in the music department said, well, if it makes you feel better, Yo-Yo Ma also did not get into the music major here. It didn't make me feel better. I didn't feel at all better by that, but that's okay. But instead, I found psychology and tech and computer science, which ended up, I guess, being a happy alternative. And after I graduated, I landed my dream job at an ad agency in New York City. I got there on day one. All of the entry-level folks started on the same day, and every single person got staffed on some glamorous television campaign except for me. I got staffed on a brand new team called Interactive and Digital Marketing, and I was pissed off. I wanted to be on the television sets with the celebrities. I called my mom, I cried, I told her I was in a dead-end career, I didn't know what to do. But 2 years later, all of those other people were still fetching coffee on television sets, and Interactive and Digital was one of the fastest growing departments inside the agency. It was around that time that I started getting phone calls and emails and texts from my brother and some of the other folks on the founding team at Facebook saying, hey, we could really use someone who knows about digital and interactive marketing. Translation, they needed someone who would work for free. That's what they wanted. I could see between the lines. And I wish that I could stand here in front of all of you today and say I immediately had the foresight to say, this is going to be a $100 billion company, of course I'm joining. But no, I was like, I live in Manhattan, I'm 23 years old. Why the hell would I move to the suburbs of California to work for my brother's stupid little company? I would never, ever do that, never. Luckily, he was very persistent, and I was very poor, so I was easily bribed. In fact, all it took at the end of the day, he said, fine, I will buy you a JetBlue plane ticket to come to California and visit us. And I was like, all right, score. And I figured that I'll just humor him, I'll get on my JetBlue flight, I'll go visit California, spend the weekend, and then I'll go right back to my life in Manhattan. But I was blown away by what I saw out there. Here I was in corporate America, and when I got there, I saw these guys living in this house, coding around the clock, so passionate about what they were building. It was like this passion I'd never seen before. They owned their success. They owned their failure. Every decision they made was theirs. It was so exciting. I think they lived on only Red Bull and Twinkies for that entire weekend, which was slightly less exciting, but everything else, just the discussions they had late into the night, it was evident they truly felt like they were going to change the way that we all communicated in the world. And it was so exciting to me that I finally decided by the end of the weekend, all right, there's no way that I can go back to my life as I knew it in Manhattan. And I decided that I was going to join the team at Facebook. I negotiated my salary on a napkin with my brother, which was not fun at all. Uh-oh, and Michael is stuck in the stage, which is even less fun. But I had the least fun conversation of all waiting for me back in New York, because I was dating a wonderful man who had just turned down his dream job in San Francisco to be with me in New York City. Not fun. So I was like, hey, you know, you just turned down your dream job. I'm moving to San Francisco in 2 weeks, yay! Spoiler alert, happy ending. We got married, everything worked out. And that was kind of my first life lesson in you know, being ambitious and pursuing your own career, and just finding a strong partner that is willing to support you in that. And with that, I moved to California, where I've lived ever since, and started my journey on the front lines at Facebook. It was just a thrilling 6-7 years that I was there. And it was, I really had the chance to be in the front row seeing how every single industry was being changed by social media. Some industries embraced it wholeheartedly, others were much more resistant. Now, people often ask me, well, what did Facebook do to win early on? And I've thought about that quite a bit over time, because when I joined, it was not evident that Facebook was going to be the dominant player in this field. MySpace, Friendster, there were so many others that were 10 times our size. So I've boiled it down to a few things that I think we did well. Some of them were on purpose, some of them were very happy accidents. The first was that we took a demand-led marketing approach. What I mean by that is we didn't just open Facebook.com to everyone on day one. We had a very slow strategic rollout. First, we were only available at a few colleges, then a few more, then the military, then high schools, then workplaces, and so on. And we would wait until enough people in a certain network would ask us for Facebook, and then we'd open it there. So we knew that it would be a success. We were almost creating kind of our own version of scarcity, like Gmail did when they launched, but made it so you had to have an invitation to get into Gmail. The second was we did, I guess, crowdsourcing before that became a really cool buzzword in tech. We realized we had all of these scaling challenges. We needed to translate the site into dozens of languages, and we didn't have that many engineers or that much funding at the time. And one of our engineers, though, said, hey, I bet out of the 5 million or so users that we had at that time, some people can probably help us translate the site. So we opened up the site to translators. Within 48 hours, the entire site was translated into Spanish and French. Fast forward, which is when you think of the amount of content on Facebook is pretty incredible. Fast forward a few years, during the time of Arab Spring, the entire site was translated into Farsi in under 24 hours. And that way, you're talking about kind of right to left versus left to right languages, which is even a bigger feat to accomplish that translation. So I think a lot of us in our businesses, we spend a lot of time thinking about acquiring that next new customer. How do we get that next business on board? What we don't think enough about is how do we take the passionate customers we already have and empower them to do more. We had all of these people who use Facebook who were thrilled to help us out translating the site on their own time, just waiting for us to give them something to do. So how can you use that in your businesses? The third thing, and this was very purposeful, was we really thought about our company culture early on. Now, I advise a lot of startups, I work with a lot of businesses, and they say, well, we're only 3 people, we're only 4 people, we're not thinking about culture yet. But even if it's only you in your business, you need to think about culture. What do you stand for? What's your mission? We thought about that early on at Facebook, and what we wanted is no matter how big the company grew, for it to feel like a hacker entrepreneur culture. We wanted everyone who walked through the door, even at 10,000 employees, to feel like they were working at a tiny, tiny startup. What we saw in Silicon Valley was these companies, everyone wants to work for the hot, shiny new company, and then as soon as it starts to get a little big and a little corporate, they lose all their best talent to the next hot, shiny startup, and we didn't want that to happen. So we started doing these things called hackathons, which are now extremely prevalent in the industry, but we're kind of just starting when we started doing them. Now, for those of you who have not had the good fortune of attending a hackathon, it is not going to sound at all fun, but you have to trust me that it's really fun. basically every few months on a Thursday night, we would all gather in the office, and anyone who wanted to would pull an all-nighter at the office. Now, this was not like your average sit at your desk, you know, working all night on something. There were DJs, there were food trucks, it was lively, it was high energy, and there was a rule. The rule was that you could not work on anything related to what you did in your day job. It had to be a total passion project from the heart, something you had always wanted to work on and never gave yourself the permission to do. Now, most of the projects in those hackathons were pretty ridiculous. A few of my favorites to note, there was one engineer who said, gosh, I love beer and I love Facebook. How do I marry these two loves of mine? And so he built this bar that when you go up to it and you tap the different kegs, it takes a photo of you and uploads to Facebook with what you're drinking. Now, of course, we all had to be good colleagues and take one for the team and test it out for him. A group of designers went to the roof of the building, this one I remember very well, and drew like a giant QR code that to this day, if you're lucky on a clear day flying over Silicon Valley, it's a scannable QR code. It's actually functional and it tells you jobs that are available at Facebook. So people did all of these kind of silly projects like that, and anyone who was left standing at about 8 o'clock in the morning would get up on the stage like this, present their project, and then we'd all go have breakfast. Now, what was interesting, though, is that every hackathon, among all the ridiculous projects, there was always one or two that was really excellent. So excellent that we decided to actually make it a feature on the site. And many of the features that we use today on Facebook were actually dreamt up in hackathons. What was even more interesting is that it was never the most senior people in the company that had those ideas. It was always the entry-level hire, the summer intern, the person 2 weeks in from a brand new job with a new perspective. Imagine being 18, 19 years old, coming to Facebook for the summer, having an idea, and all of a sudden your idea is seen by 1 billion people a few months later. There's really no other industry that you can have that impact. And the culture that that started to create in the company is that people felt like a good idea could come from anywhere. They didn't have to wait for their boss to hand them a project that they'd be stuck working on for years. All they would have to do is wait for the next hackathon, and they could come up with a project that a few weeks later they might be leading a giant team in the company. To this day, if you walk in the Facebook campus, it really feels like everyone in there is an entrepreneur. And it was actually at one of those hackathons that I created a project that wound up leading to me leaving Facebook, ironically, I guess. But I used to shy away from the hackathons because I thought, I'm not a coder. What could I possibly add to a night where everyone's hacking and creating things? But finally, I decided, you know what, I'm very passionate about media. I had been very involved in the election, leading Facebook strategy in the election, the strategy through Arab Spring. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take my hand at kind of starting what a media company of the future looks like in one of these hackathons. I'm going to create Facebook Live. It's going to be a 24/7 news channel that lives entirely inside Facebook. Do we even need television news anymore? So I took a camera, I started interviewing any engineer I found. I had like my whole roving crew. 3 people watched, and 2 of them were my parents. That's okay, you have to start somewhere. I didn't even make it awake all night to present. I went home around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and so I figured, okay, my big Facebook Live experiment died. Until about a month later, when out of nowhere, one of the biggest talent agencies in Hollywood called me saying, Katy Perry would like to go on your Facebook Live show to announce her world tour. At which point I thought, oh shit. I was like, all right, it's okay, I'm just gonna call them back and I'm gonna tell them it was a huge misunderstanding. This isn't like a real TV show, this is a hackathon project. And I was like, wait a minute, what would my male colleagues do? They would not like call saying, sorry, this is a mistake. They would wanna meet Katy Perry. I wanna meet Katy Perry. So I called them back, I was like, I'm gonna fake it till you make it, because that's what you have to do in life. And I called them back and I was like, you know what, you are absolutely right. Facebook Live is a very reputable show and absolutely the place that Katy Perry should announce her world tour, of course. Then I grabbed every intern I could find. I was like, I don't care that you have no clue what Facebook Live is. You pretend you have always worked on it. So Katy Perry got to the office. Shockingly, it was a huge success. We had millions of people tune in live. She sold out her world tour in minutes, and it started this incredible snowball effect for Facebook Live, where we had tons of celebrities, we had politicians, sports figures, world leaders come through, because for the first time, they had a platform where they could speak directly to their fans without kind of an intermediator, without someone else's opinion clouding their perspective. And I was out to dinner with my husband a few months later when I actually got a call from the White House, which makes me giddy because, like, who gets to say that except for Olivia Pope and Jack Bauer? Come on. We were at dinner, and I was like, sorry, honey, the White House is calling, I have to go. And they were calling because President Obama wanted to go on Facebook Live to do a town hall to all of America. So it was a very, very exciting moment for me. Here was this little hackathon project I had just come up with out of nowhere a few months ago that was now going to be the platform for the President of the United States. So I had 2 weeks to pull this off. I recently just published a book, and the book kicks off with this story of getting the call from the White House and everything we had to do to get that in order. And through that process, though, I realized, I was like, you know what? I've been at Facebook almost 7 years at this point. It's been a thrilling, amazing ride, but I feel like we're just on the cusp of how media is going to change. And I'm excited that Adrian's coming later today to talk to you about all of that. And I realized, you know, again, it's been an incredible 7 years at Facebook, but it's time for me to move on to do my next thing. After I left Facebook, I gave one interview with the New York Times in which they asked what I wanted to do, and I said, you know, I really want to start my own company. I have all these media initiatives, and I was like, oh, but I really, really want to sing on Broadway. I have not given up that dream. And I got skewered in the press for that. It made me realize, and this is kind of, I guess, my soapbox for 30 seconds, and I'll get back on the 10 trends wagon, but it made me realize that, especially for a woman in business, it's very, very hard to have a side passion. It's socially acceptable now to be very focused on your career and your home life, your family, but it's not yet socially acceptable to have a side interest that still feels frivolous or self-indulgent. And I sort of started to think, okay, well, this part of me is really important to who I am. Sure, I love being a businesswoman, I love tech, but I really, really love to sing. Do I need to bury that to be taken seriously in this world? And I grappled with that a lot. I actually wound up giving a TED Talk at TEDx Broadway about how Broadway could come into the digital age. And just a couple of months ago, just this February, I was sitting at home out of nowhere when one of the producers of Rock of Ages on Broadway called saying, you know what, we saw your TED Talk, we saw the New York Times interview, we saw a few clips, we'd like to offer you a starring role on Broadway. So, thank you. Which I just wrapped a few weeks ago. It was my absolute dream come true. I had a few mentors tell me, you know, don't do this, Randi, you won't be taken seriously. And I was like, you know what, I'm pretty sure at the end of my life, I'm not gonna sit there being, I wish I didn't sing on Broadway so more people would like me. No, and I think the more of us that we're all three-dimensional people. That's what makes us so wonderful as humans. That's the reason we love sites like Facebook and social media, because we see all three dimensions of our friends and the people we care about. And so I think the more of us that are courageous enough to pursue our side passions, the more that we pave the road for future generations to feel like they can do that also. Now, at the time that I left Facebook, really I had two startups. I had my son Asher 1 week after hosting the president at Facebook. And Asher completely changed my entire view on technology. Prior to that, I'd spent the last 6 to 7 years just heads down thinking, oh my gosh, who are we disrupting today? What are we innovating? You know, let's go. All of a sudden, I started noticing that maybe our habits with technology are not 100% healthy. I started noticing more people walking down the street, like tripping over each other because they're on their phones. I noticed people at restaurants that are like not talking, they're texting. I had the fortune of being in Sydney, Australia recently, where they were doing this magnificent light show over the Opera House. Every single person, there were thousands of people watching, was on their phone. And I was like, why are you watching it in your phone? You're there. You're at the light show. Like, you can see it with your eyes. And it's come to this world where that's how we communicate. Now, even my son, who just turned 3 now, recently, a little friend of his came over for a play date, saw my laptop, and went, Grandpa! I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And his mom said, oh, we Skype so much he thinks his grandpa lives inside the computer. So again, that led me down a very interesting path where I started thinking a lot about, okay, technology has brought wonderful opportunity into our lives, but with it has come also a lot of challenges and a lot of complications. It's really complicated to raise children in the digital world. It's really complicated to manage a crew of employees in a business. It's hard to find love. So much about our life has become amazing, but also more complicated. And that's what really set me off to write my book, Complicated, and to think more about all the facets of technology in our lives. Now, a few recent news pieces that I think are pretty complicated. Drones. So Amazon Prime just announced that by next year, as early as next year, they could have 20-minute delivery windows via drone. Now, this is a great time, if it's not too late, to switch careers to go into being an ER doctor, because they said the reason it's not ready to launch yet is because they can't stop the drones from dropping the boxes on people's heads. So this is going to unleash a whole new industry in the ER people. But this isn't stopping some other businesses from adopting drone delivery. There is a hotel in California, a very, very fancy luxury hotel, that if you are in one of the $10,000 a night suites, as you do when you travel, they will deliver champagne to your room via drone. There's also a startup that recently announced their intention to deliver tacos via drone. So all you have to do is pull out your phone, say, okay, taco copter, come find me, and then the phone says, don't move, just stay exactly where you are, and your tacos will come to you. So again, I think this is obviously unleashes so much opportunity. Imagine if you're a realtor and you own a drone and can now take gorgeous aerial photos and videos of your homes. There's so many cool applications, but also, are we going to be happy living in a world with just millions of drones dropping Amazon boxes everywhere? That'll be wait to be seen. So here I am. This was my part on Broadway in Rock of Ages. I decided, okay, I'm a tech person, so I'm not going to be just your average actress. I decided to wear Google Glass on stage. Now, it was very cool because all of a sudden, I could share what it was like to be in a Broadway show with anyone around the world who wanted to see the footage of it. But it also made me think, okay, the techie in me is like, this is so cool. All I have to do is wink my eye, and I can just be videotaping all of you. How awesome is that? And then the normal person / mom in me was like, wait a minute. I can just wink my eye and be videotaping? Can anyone who's wearing Google Glass just wink their eye and be videotaping all of us? And is that such a wonderful thing? Do we want to kind of be living our whole lives as if we're an extra in everyone else's reality show all the time? The self-driving car. Now, just last week, they unveiled a driverless, steering wheel-less, brake-less pod. It's basically just the car just pulls up, you program in where you want to go, and off it goes. Now, I have to tell you, the first time I was driving down the highway in Silicon Valley and saw a car with no driver, I may have peed in my pants. At first, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. That's the driverless car they're talking about. And then I was like, we are going really fast on the highway, and that car has no driver in it. But then I realized, looking around me, I was like, well, all the other cars on the road might as well have no driver in them either, because everyone's like staring at their phone and not even at the road. So we have gotten to the point clearly that we need technology to save us from technology. The only thing that makes me feel, again, a little complicated about something like this is imagine McDonald's going to the car companies and saying, I'll pay a lot of money for you to route half of these cars past McDonald's, even if that takes the passenger a little bit out of their way. So again, we're unlocking a whole new world where you may not even have control of, we talk about web traffic, buying web traffic, now you can buy actual physical traffic for probably. And finally, Lady Gaga announced that she's going to do a concert in space. My favorite reaction was Jimmy Fallon saying it's always fun when an artist performs in their hometown. But again, this has been a huge frontier in the last year or two. We've had the first astronaut tweeting from space, the first YouTube video from space. We now have, you can go on consumer space flights thanks to Richard Branson and Elon Musk. So it's, I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens on this frontier. Now, before we get into the 10 things we do want to think about with social media, here are a few things that are absolute pet peeves for all of us that you should not do on social media. If you see yourself in one of these, just walk it off. We've all done it. People who use #blessed. Like, let's face it, no one actually is feeling blessed. They're just bragging about their lives. It's always like I'm getting drone champagne delivered to my $10,000 night hotel room, #blessed. You're like, okay, let's move on. The obsessive food blogger. The person whose no meal is too small or too gross to share with all of their friends online. You're like, that doesn't even look good. That only looks good to you because you're hungry right now. Even Martha Stewart herself, queen of presentation, fell victim to this. Here are two recent photos she posted on her Twitter. I think the one on the left is vomit. She maintains that it's an iceberg wedge with homemade Russian dressing. I stand by my assessment of vomit. But she had to go on almost every morning show to justify this, how even Martha Stewart herself could fall victim to posting gnarly food photos on Twitter. The mommy overshare. This was me. I have to fess up. I totally did this. I was like, I am never going to be that mom. I'm too cool. I have my own life. And then I got possessed by an alien force that made me only upload photos of my son for 4 months until a few friends did a little bit of an intervention. But I always see moms posting, and I'm like, maybe your child wants to get a job one day. Just putting that out there. I think what we don't realize as parents, we spend so much time thinking, okay, telling our children, don't be on this site or don't do this. But what we don't realize is we've created a digital footprint for them long before they even had a say in it. The romantic couple who you're like, please just take this offline. Why am I watching your entire relationship play out? Now, it's always actually that same couple that a week later breaks up because they were too busy texting online with each other and forgot to actually be in a relationship. The over-filtered Instagrammer. We all have that friend. You're like, I saw you 3 minutes ago. I know you didn't get that tan in 3 minutes. It didn't happen. Oh, this is my favorite, the vague booker, the person who's worst day ever, ... And you're like, they're baiting you, it's a train wreck, you can't stop, you should just look away, but finally you're like, what happened? I don't want to talk about it, ... You're like, obviously you want to talk about it, you just posted it to 700 people online. And finally, the old person who just doesn't get it. Here is a father who is blatantly confusing Google and Facebook. in my newsfeed. So thank gosh he bailed his father out. Otherwise, who knows how long that would have gone. So without further ado, I want to take you through 10 of the most exciting trends that I'm seeing that can be applied to any of our businesses, anyone thinking of going into entrepreneurship. Hopefully at least you'll leave feeling inspired or excited by one of these. Now, the first trend is that it really is an age where you can be an entrepreneur inside a bigger company. Now, when I left my job at the ad agency to go work for Facebook, I felt like it was really an either-or. You were either in corporate America or you were doing a startup in a garage. Trust me, garages are overrated. It sounds really romantic and sexy, but then when it's the winter and there's no coffee, it's just not that exciting to be in a startup in a garage. Now, I'm calling it the age of the entreployee because there's now so many ways to be really entrepreneurial inside a bigger company. Now, I'm sure many of you here are in a role in your company that maybe didn't even exist 5 or 10 years ago. In fact, the jobs many of us will be doing 10 years from now are jobs that haven't even been created yet, which is something that makes it all very exciting. Jobs like social media manager, community manager, brand evangelist, these are all job titles that didn't even exist 7, 8 years ago, all of a sudden are now jobs that are commonplace at even small companies. This is a great job for someone very entrepreneurial who's not quite ready to go out and take that entrepreneurial step on their own yet, wants the structure of a bigger company, but wants to be armed with resources, with a budget to actually go out and be entrepreneurial on behalf of their bigger company. Now, if you're going to attract these entrepreneurial-minded people for your company, you need to recruit in entrepreneurial ways. Grubhub does a lot of their recruiting on Snapchat. Basically, they'll come up with little skills like send us a doodle, do this, send us a video, but they'll do it on Snapchat, so you only have 10 seconds to capture what they want you to do and get back to them on it. So it's, again, really appealing to this internet generation. Similarly, Marriott actually created a game where it's just a fun virtual game. Come on and manage a hotel or manage a branch of a hotel. But if you score highly enough on that game, you can actually score a job interview with Marriott. So again, attracting these entrepreneurial people means you have to think about recruiting in new ways. A lot of companies are adopting something called 15 or 20% time. Google is really famous for doing this 20% time. They tell employees, okay, 20% of your work week, you can work on anything you want. A nonprofit, your own startup, any project you want. You can use company resources. You can have meetings in our building. Now, granted, the average work week at Google is probably like 60 to 80 hours, so even giving 20% time, you're still working a normal week. But a lot of Google's biggest products like Gmail, AdSense, Google News, all came out of 20% time. 3M, the Post-it note, came out of their 15% time that they give people. So again, when you give your employees the freedom and flexibility to be creative, they can do amazing things for your business if you just give them that opportunity. We talked about hackathons at Facebook, how that was an integral part of the culture. Now you can find a hackathon in virtually any industry. Just this year alone, I went to a Purina pet food hackathon where they had kittens on every table. I'm not kidding, it was very cute. I went to a Fashion Week hackathon where they had runway models walking around with wearable technology and dresses that lit up when you tweet. I went to a bridal industry hackathon. Any industry that you're in, you can find a hackathon in it now. So there's 2 reasons this is great. Let's say you want to start your own company, you just don't have resources yet, maybe you don't have a team. My first recommendation to new entrepreneurs is always to go out and find a hackathon in that industry because you'll meet other like-minded people, maybe you'll meet a co-founder there. There's always the people on the judging panel are investors or people high up in that industry that you'd want to network with anyway. It's a great way to test a proof of concept. If you're on the other side, consider throwing a hackathon for your company. Maybe it'll help you solve some of the big problems that you've been thinking about. Maybe it'll help you recruit some fresh new talent in. So anyway, even if you don't have hackers in your business, throw a think-a-thon or an idea-thon, something like that, which can be really, really fun getting people out of their normal zone. Trend 2 is the fact that every single one of us is a media company. Whether we like it or not, if you have a profile on any kind of public-facing site, you are a media company and people are looking to you to put out content and media. Now, even if your company, you're like, we are a services company, or we create a product, or B2B, you are still a media company. You still have people looking to you, not just for your product, they're not just coming to you for discounts and offers online anymore, they want to come to you for actual, real, meaningful content. So here's a few brands that I think are doing this very well. Red Bull. We often think of Red Bull as just a consumer packaged good company. You grab it off the shelf when you want to stay up all night. But Red Bull sees themselves as a media company. They have millions of followers and subscribers online, and they've started broadcasting live extreme sports events. Now, in fact, they do this so successfully that many of their events actually get higher tune-in than sports television networks. We also have Chipotle, who has decided that they're going to turn even the things that you would usually think are garbage into media companies. They've partnered with authors, with graphic designers, with artists to design their cups, their bags, so that they're unique and that you get a work of literature or a work of art on even your takeaway, throw out things from Chipotle. Air New Zealand does a great job of making kind of surprise and delight across social media. If you're following Air New Zealand, there's a good chance that every few days or so they might grant you extra points, an upgrade, a free flight. They really, really go out of their way to make sure people feel a real connection and a reason to follow everything that they're doing. Diane von Furstenberg, she recently had all of her models for New York Fashion Week walk the runway wearing Google Glass. She decided she didn't want to just be a designer, a fashion label. She wanted to be a media company showcasing the show from her own point of view. They had over 2 million people from 100 different countries tune in just to watch the live stream from the model's perspective. And finally, Oreo cookie. This is one of my favorites. Last year during the Super Bowl, when there was a blackout in the middle of the Super Bowl and everyone was freaking out, some very enterprising social media manager at Oreo went on there and posted this image, "Don't worry everyone, you can still dunk in the dark." And all of a sudden, every brand sat up and said, oh my gosh, Oreo has someone at the Super Bowl commenting. We need someone at the Super Bowl. We need someone at the World Cup, at the Oscars, at the Olympics. So this has sparked an entire new industry over the past year or two, being brand journalists, where brands are now having entire journalist teams in-house in order to make sure that they can comment real-time on pop culture and things people care about. Gatorade even has their whole own social media mission control, where they actually look at what people are talking about online and how they can actually get people from their brand organically into the conversation. So again, something really to think about. Not all of us are going to be broadcasting extreme sports events or sending models down fashion runways in Google Glass, but can you be doing more? Can you do more videos to educate and entertain your audience? Can you do a Q&A with your executive team online? There's, I'm sure, a lot of things that you can easily and cheaply do to be more of a media company. Trend 3 is the fact that your connections are now a currency. I've been seeing more and more that businesses are starting to forego getting paid in traditional ways in order to take, if you tweet or Instagram about them, they'll take it as a form of payment, which is interesting. Here is the world's first kind of self-proclaimed Instagram hotel. It's a hotel in Australia. What you pay for the hotel depends on how many followers you have on Instagram and how many times you've posted about the hotel while you stayed there. So when you get to checkout at the end, you kind of show them this math that affects what you pay. If you have 10,000 or more Instagram followers, you automatically stay for free. So very interesting concept. Here is a restaurant chain, Bird's Eye restaurant chain, that actually treats Instagram as currency as well. When the bill arrives, all you have to do is show the waiter, look, I took photos of my meal. I guess this is the one exception to my like, don't post gnarly food photos. If you're gonna get your bill for free, go for it. All in favor. But you just show the waiter, look, I posted about this online, and all of a sudden your bill is waived. So again, very interesting. Popular Pays is an app where you can log in, you put in your credentials for all your social media sites, and it shows you based on how many followers you have, how influential you are online, what are things that you can get for free online or anywhere in the world when you travel. The Merit Shop, this is a whole online store that doesn't actually take regular currency. You trade a talent or a skill for items. So you can go on, you can say, okay, I really want this shuffle, and they'll say, okay, well, you have to upload a YouTube video of you telling a joke or singing, or send in a sketch, write a short story. Here's what you have to do to kind of earn this merchandise, trade your talent for it. Again, a new way of thinking about commerce. Finally, Marc Jacobs even did a pop-up shop at Fashion Week where they took tweets and Instagrams as payment. You go into the shop, again, based on kind of how many followers you have, they show you what you can grab out of the store for free. So very interesting. More and more businesses are starting to do this. I'm not saying you should give away all of your products for free, but what these businesses are unlocking is they're realizing, okay, some of our customers have extreme value in telling their whole network about our product. Maybe we should do a little more to unleash that. Trend 4 is in the similar vein around reinventing retail. There's actually so many interesting things happening on the retail and commerce front, even in the traditional storefront as we know it. So much innovation happening there. Pointer, a new denim shop that's been popping up, is an entirely salesperson-free experience. You walk into the store, you scan your phone over anything you want to try on, a robot brings it to the dressing room for you, and if you like it when you're in the dressing room, you just scan your phone again, and the items ship to your house. So again, for anyone who has a teenager in the audience, knows that teenagers don't even like to actually talk to people anymore. So this is like maybe a great way for teenagers to do their shopping, although we want them to get out and talk to people more. Vending machines, you can get virtually anything you want anywhere in the world in a vending machine. In Japan, they have vending machines that sell luxury lingerie. I also saw a vending machine that sells Chanel handbags, something that I never, ever thought that you would be able to find in a vending machine. In Korea, on the actual subway during your morning commute, they set up a grocery store. So you can actually do your grocery shopping during your morning commute to work or your afternoon commute home. Here's a restaurant in the UK that's a pay-as-you-will restaurant, which are becoming more popular and cropping up more and more. There's no set prices on the menu. You go in and you sort of pay what you think you owe. What's interesting about this model is that people actually usually end up paying more than they would have otherwise if you just gave them a set bill, because they don't want to be perceived as coming across too cheap. Now, here's a Wi-Fi company that employed a kind of interesting technique. They named all of their networks Steal My Wi-Fi. So you went on, and it was just a kind of a fun thing. But again, part of the game with commerce and retail today is humor, attracting people's attention that way. A lot of fashion brands starting to take influence from tech in their retail and consumer products. Here is a pair of very expensive shoes that I saw on Net-a-Porter using emojis as the icons on the shoes. And this is my favorite in this category. This is a vending machine in South America that sells coffee, but you have to yawn to get it. Otherwise, it does not activate the machine unless it actually senses you yawning to get your coffee. So lots of fun things happening on the retail front. It's a great time right now to take a risk, to be innovative, to be the first to do something. And consumers are very, very willing to try new things now for the first time. Trend 5 is what I'm calling turn FOMO into JOMO. Now, FOMO is the fear of missing out. It is exacerbated by social media because it seems when you're having the worst day ever, you look online and all of your friends are having some like fabulous life. They're all on vacation, they're all at some party. What you have to remind yourself is that we are all really good marketers. And so your friends are just posting that 1 second of their life that looks fun and glamorous. The rest of their life is exactly like yours. And they're probably looking at you and experiencing FOMO. So my goal is to turn this year into JOMO, the joy of missing out, where we all sit around and we're not like worrying about what everyone else is doing all the time. We're like, there is nowhere I would rather be than exactly where I am right now. Now, FOMO just got entered into the Urban Dictionary this past year. My favorite is definition 2, the feeling of being in one place, yet plagued by the overwhelming suspicion that something even better is going on somewhere else. So again, you can see how this can be made much worse by social media. So a lot of sites are starting to capitalize on this FOMO trend and turning it into the joy of missing out. This slide should really be titled, "Wow, there's an app for everything." This app is called Run Pee. And when you're in the movies, let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I have to pee so bad, but I know if I leave, I'm gonna miss the best part of this movie. Well, with Run Pee, it can actually say, nope, don't worry, nothing good is gonna happen in the next 7 minutes, so go pee. They have it for virtually any movie that's currently in the theaters. So again, you never have to have FOMO again in a movie theater. But let's say you just really want to give your friends FOMO, you can't help it. Well, Couch Cache can help you fake an awesome social life. It basically, based on geolocation, shows you, oh, okay, here's some like cool restaurants and things going on in your area. We even have stock photos to make it look like you're there. So which one do you want to choose? And pick an update to go with it. And here's Bootify, if you're just feeling really overwhelmed by FOMO, you can go on this app and say like, oh my gosh, here's what I'm doing, I'm working, I'm stressed out, I'm this, and it will like help you, guide you in a few-minute meditation to lead you back on the track to JOMO again. And finally, if you just can't stop yourself from always looking at what everyone else is doing, here is a site called Antisocial, which will actually block social media on your computer for a few hours so you can move on with your life for just a few hours and then go right back to looking at what everyone else is doing all the time. Trend 6, the maker movement. And what I'm really focused on today is 3D printing. 3D printing is poised to become a multi-billion-dollar industry in just the next few years. And it's pretty incredible the kinds of things that people are even making from 3D printers today. Here's a human ear that was made in a 3D printer. They predict by next year, these will be ready to be implanted and will actually work better than our ears today. Here's an arm cast that was made in a 3D printer. A kayak that was made entirely through a 3D printer and pieced together. Here's a consumer device that anyone can buy. Any color that you see on the internet, you're looking around, you're like, oh, that's a nice shade of purple, that's that. This device will print it as a makeup palette for you. So you just see a color, and all of a sudden it will print an eyeshadow or a blush for you out of this mini 3D printer. On the fashion side, lots of exciting things happening. On the left, you see a travel company where you actually don't imagine never having to bring bags with you on your vacation ever again. This company will actually just send you about 10 to 20 email files, and when you get to your final destination, you print out your wardrobe and everything that you need for your trip. Now that sounds crazy today, we're not quite there today, but I can definitely imagine 10 years from now, just like every hotel has kiosks to print your boarding pass, maybe every hotel will have a 3D printer. Maybe you will actually be able to arrive at your vacation or at your business hotel and print out everything you need for your trip without ever bringing a bag with you. On the right, you'll see Nike has actually started 3D printing some of their athletic shoes, and Prada, at some of their Europe boutiques, will 3D print your name or your initials onto the bottom of a custom pair of shoes. Even food is being 3D printed. Here's a 3D spaghetti printer. You can see the little vials of tomato sauce and kind of, I guess, spaghetti paste that go into the printer, and they can print it in any shape that you would want. Here's a pancake bot that can make pancakes in absolutely any shape that you would ever desire. Eiffel Tower pancakes, go for it. But on the really kind of social impact side, in China, they have giant 3D printers that can actually print up to 10 houses a day. Now, when you think about that, that can really have just tremendous implication for closing the poverty gap, for dealing with the problem that we have, especially in San Francisco, with the huge gap in income disparity and homelessness. But everything is not complicated. With all of the fun opportunity that I've shown you with 3D printing, you can now also 3D print weapons from your home with 3D printers. All you have to do is a simple Google search, and it will very easily tell you how to print a gun in a 3D printer and bullets. So again, there's always a flip side. With everything that brings about huge, massive opportunity for society, there's also always a cost and a complication with it. Trend 7 is around life logging. Now, again, anyone who has a teenager knows that young people today are obsessed with documenting every moment of their lives online. But it's not just teenagers, adults too. Now, many of us probably wear some sort of health tracking device, like a Fitbit or an Up device or a Fuel Band. With this data, we can now see how well we sleep, how many steps we take, how many calories we burn, our heart rate at every moment of the day, which allows us to unlock really interesting data and insights about our health in aggregate. Now, at the same time, even our homes log data. Here's the Nest device, which Google recently bought for over $3 billion, which is logging, and you can control through your phone the temperature and everything